Hangin with Mr. Douglas.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome to the first in the interview series on the show, Hangin with Mr. Douglas. This is where we get past the first lap of maybes and could-bes and get right into the center of the labyrinth, asking not whether or not it's real, but what we can do about it. Now, we could not be more magically blessed today because of a real-life Radagast the Wizard residing in the jungle is with us. I received an energy healing session from Nate back in 2023, and I'm forever grateful for it. He is a sorcerer overflowing with deep streams of wisdom and myriad articles and essays on his website, Postmugglism.com, providing, among many things, a panoply of knowledge and easy-to-grok step-by-steps and how-tos. From breaking down how to commune with spirits, curry favor with Hecate, and plan out a magical life, the I do wizard shit, shamanic healer, astro mage, sorcerer of the jungle, and friend of the fae, Nate. Thank you very much for hanging, man.
Thank you very much for having me and for a spectacular intro. That's fantastic. That's great.
Well, thank you for the inspiration. It is my pleasure to have you here. And as I said, this is all about getting to what we can do about it. And your website just blows me away with the easy accessibility and even ritual presentation, step-by-steps, of how to just actually actualize doing magic in your life. But before we get into any of that, I'm curious, how did you first get into magic, and what was life like before?
Yeah, well, so I was actually just having this conversation with a friend of ours yesterday, so it's fresh for me. I can tell the story again. It's interesting, because the question yesterday was like, when did you know that magic was real? And I think it's basically the same question, right? I think that I always was tapped into something. Like I knew that there was something there that wasn't quite well enough explained. Just sort of the ease with which certain things would happen in my life because I wanted them really, really hard, and I put all of that into it. And in my youth, it was angst. It was like fury that I could channel into making something happen. It was just sort of undeniable that was a thing. And I grew up in kind of a hyper-Christian, but weirdly magical kind of house. My mother kept a very witchy kind of house without realizing that that's what she was doing. It's like there was herbalism, there's a million spices in the spice rack. There was all kinds of like old wives' tales that we used to heal this or that. And my mom's always telling some kind of a story about, hey, did you know that you can use honey to cure this or that? It's always like the most natural way, the most pure and witchy way. So there was that as kind of the undertone of it, and they believed in a magical universe, but like a Christian one, like a very strong fundamentalist Christian one. But still, there's miracles, and there were hands-on healings at church at various times in my life. So I had been adjacent to things that were inexplicable, and had some of my own kind of. I think there was more to that than just what physically happened kind of experiences, but not seeing ghosts or anything cool like that, just more kind of the internal knowing that like this isn't good enough, it doesn't add up. And so I think that's where the drive for it came from, and that was always there. And then you read like Lord of the Rings, and you spend your childhood in Fantasyland, and some part of it you're like, it's probably not like that, but I know there's something out there. And then it was the internet. Like this was in the late 90s. I was a late teenager in the late 90s, and that's when there were like internet text files, the internet archives of all of the ancient texts and so forth. As rudimentary as they were, that was certainly enough to explain to me that like I'm not the first person to have this experience of like there's more to life behind it. And then you could dig through that for years and try stuff and fail at stuff. And there's more, as they used to say, blinds. There's more blinds in that kind of material than there is like actually useful magical knowledge. But I guess that what really got me was that there was just this massive amount of attention and time and effort paid to something that would have to be real on some level, or people wouldn't have poured all of their souls into for so long, right? Even if it didn't work for me immediately based off of what I could find on the internet, I felt like it was real and it was there. So that just, I think, a lot of people talk about being born into it and their grandmother knew something, or they got introduced to like a coven when they were young or something. That really wasn't my way. I did everything myself and just kind of tried hard for probably like 2 decades before it really started working. I mean, you have those like beginner's luck kind of magical experiences and the undeniable things that like tease you to go further and further. But from my magical introduction, which was like when I was 18 or something, when I started actually doing some kind of trying to make magic happen in my life, whether that was manifesting or whatever it was at the time. And then, 10 years later was probably sigils, but none of that really consistently worked for me until the late great Gordon White, until I discovered Rune Soup. And then, then it was over. Then it was real working magic all the time, and it's kind of been that since. So what was that like? The peak of our magical mayhem was right around COVID, and so it was probably like I discovered him maybe 6 years before that. So it was a long period of fucking with magic that wasn't exactly real wizard shit, as I like to say. And then there was discovering like better systems and better understandings and being introduced into theurgy, getting over my Christian upbringing and what it did to my ability to see magic in the world. And that took a long time. So like being good at it and getting magic to work was much more recently than that. It was like maybe 10 years ago, right?
Well, and you certainly provided a wealth of experience and knowledge sharing with the world, both on X and on your website since then. Thank you. Fascinating and awesome answer. Yeah, I too grew up in a Catholic atmosphere, but that ever-present sensation of, hey, if these saints are doing these by location, I can fly around and heal people thing, there's something there. Padre Pio et al. Very awesome. You write about recognizing times of transformation in our lives, and I would actually really just love to hear the story about how you went from pre-jungle wizard to master jungle wizard in the jungle with your jungle estate. But this includes building a beautiful home that you have put together, as well as a food forest, which, man, you got me salivating with all of your pictures on X. But in your article, 5 Signs You're Facing a Big Transformation, you write, being uncomfortable is part of the change, and that's what we don't like, but that there is more good than bad with change. Change helps us grow. It moves us out of old stagnant situations and into new ones with fresh potential. And big transformative periods where you have to accept a lot of changing dynamics all at once are few and far between, but you'll know when it's time because you'll know when it's time. Now that you know what to look for, you'll be able to feel it coming on. So what was that lived experience for you in that massive, beautiful transition that you are now existing within?
So it's interesting because the longer that I'm here, the more that I feel like it has been going on since I was a kid. My dad spoke Spanish fluently for like my whole life, and his Mexican heritage, nothing like that, but he had some friends. I think through like a church mission organization thing, when I was a kid, he would fly down to Mexico a bunch of times. And so eventually at the end of that, he took me down one time, and we had guys trip out to show me like a different way of living. And honestly, like it was genius for my dad, because at that time, Mexico was extremely different. It's a lot more normalized, a lot more modernized in the intervening years. But we had to like hack our way in to see some friends in the jungle at one point. It was pretty raw. So I got to see something that had sort of loosely been alluring to me. I was fascinated by the rainforest. I was fascinated by jungle stuff, and I think maybe because I was born in the Philippines as an Air Force brat, and so we were very close to the jungle, and that scenario was very tropical. So I think these things have like rhymed throughout my history. They have shown up a few times, but I was sort of obsessed at that time with the jungle. I was watching Fern Gully, lots and lots of Fern Gully.
Yeah.
It's the best. And
Baddie rap, one of the best. Come on.
And Medicine Man and all so this was a whole theme, like the jungleness. So my dad took me down here, and since then I think written about on the blog and talked about many times that there was this spot at the Tulum ruins that like struck me like a lightning bolt, and I've gone back to it and been struck several times since then with this kind of flashback, flash forward thing. So there's something to this place for me that, I don't know, past life or karmic responsibility, whatever. But I'm doing something here that is part of something that is bigger than me that I can only kind of barely understand. And I've met some other people like me, enough like me for it to be similar, who are doing this kind of permaculture food forest thing. So there's a whole vibe that I was tapped into along the way. But I think when I realized that, it's a sort of an inverted story. I was just very, very uncomfortable being in the U.S. I was exceedingly uncomfortable in my skin and in society, and it didn't make very much sense to me. And so that reached kind of a peak. Also, I think like the stresses in life, and eventually it was COVID too, but like even before that, there was just me not fitting right in where I was, which at the time was Dallas, Texas. But when I had enough struggles in my career and I had enough things that I just gotten kind of totally fed up with, and my wife had gotten fed up with me being fed up with, we were like, okay, we got to do something else. There's some other dynamic that needs to happen. And she was well positioned enough running her agency that I was able to kind of go freelance and get a little bit more freedom and play with it. And right about that time is when we decided to come to Mexico for vacation, but also kind of research. So there was all of this like lead up that happened to it that wasn't terribly magical in the experience of it. As I have looked back at like the synchronicities of things that lined up, it's like obviously part of this like long story. But this particular point, we were living, pseudo-materialistic lives. We were in Dallas doing career things and working in the marketing world and just kind of hating the day-to-day of it and trying to escape that. And it was phrased in my everyday language like, escape, get the fuck out of here. My original website for this was time2gtfo.com. So it's like, it's time to get the fuck out. This thing is for my own purposes. I was speaking to myself. But we had this idea of disappearing somewhere at some point, and it was in the future at the time. Then it became much less theory when COVID came and we got stuck in our house for a while. And I did this amazing 6-month gardening exercise where I realized that, okay, this is what's for me. I'm very good at this. I grew up gardening and stuff, but then there was, you have your own life and you never really have time for it. So then when I got the time, because COVID made us take like 4 or 5 months off, I experienced living a little bit closer to nature. And I realized that was part of what was sort of missing in my soul. I had this emptiness of, I could accomplish things, do good in your career, but mostly it just pissed me off. And so I got more and more and more pissed off of this way of being that didn't feel right until we went to Mexico and checked it out and came back and COVID hit and I gardened for 6 months and we're like, okay, it's clear now what we need to do. And if you were rune souping at the time, you know that Gordon was like mainlining us all of this, like the world's about to get super weird and you want to find your place, you want to find your Rivendell, right? And so that was how we filled that gap. This was our Rivendell. And it came to me through a very confusing and long set of psychedelic experiences and vision quests and all kinds of magic and lots and lots and lots of tarot. But we came with all of this to the idea that, let's say like one really good mushroom trip where I had like the world speaking to me audibly and telling me like, go do something else, right? And so... Cool. So in that moment, we got kind of the directional, obviously we're not supposed to be here. Obviously the COVID thing is teaching us that we don't want to be stuck in like a house in suburbia. That's just awful. If this ever happens again, we want to be somewhere else for it. And we were able to prioritize. I think that's really what that did. Maybe, definitely for us, maybe for a lot of people, it sort of showed what was essentially important in your experience of life. Because you removed everything except the most essential thing, and then you had to do that for like a year with no breaks, right? And so if you hated that experience, like you came out of that, I think, either thirsting for something completely different or just really beaten down by it. But if you, like us, got that little bit of warning from Gordon and we were able to maneuver a little bit right in the moment, we found ourselves with a lot less reason to stay where we were. And that led us, because, when I say we were involved with Rune Soup at the time, like very heavily. We did the As Above thing in late 2019 where Gordon White and Austin Koppick put together, and of course Caitlin Koppick, put together the sort of conference, the joining of astrology and magic together, and astro magic exploded after that. And so this is like coming right off of that really hot magical time where we all feel like this is actually what we want to be doing. We want to be doing more magic, we want to be shaping the universe the way we want through that and less through trying to pay for it or to climb your career to something. So as all of this is swirling together in a very chaotic and confusing way, we're trying to find meaning in this newly limited kind of world. And so we're being very practical about what we care about and what we don't care about. And the world is being very impractical about what you can do and how you go about doing it. And from that, it stripped us to what do we actually give a shit about? We don't give a shit about most of what's here in Dallas. We don't enjoy it enough. Like we're just doing it because you're like supposed to or something. Let's do something insane and different. We liked Mexico. That's a jungle. I like jungles, right? I want to be a jungle boy. Sarah, my wife, is like a super good sport and is like, let's do it. Let's burn the boats. Let's sail to some new place and just live a crazy life. And so we did. But there was, of course, through that process, like a lot of spirit negotiation. There was a lot of pre-planning. There's a very complicated story, so it's kind of hard to sum it up well into how we got through that transition. But let's say by fate, it was a very fated experience. And then the magic was in kind of working out, like, what the hell does that vision mean, and what am I supposed to do now, and where do I go, and what do I do? And so all of those kind of things were tactical magic for a really long time, and I think that is what bore that article and a lot of what postmugglism has become about, other than just like fun magic stuff, magic for creating transformation. Because shortly before that, I had sort of devoted my magical career to Hecate, and from the experience henceforth, I would say she is a change agent by her very nature. Her polymorphous nature likes diversity, right? Likes a diversity of experience, and there is always this like transformational thing that's happening. That's good for me. I like that ride. I like a good roller coaster of a life experience. But in signing up for that, we signed up for changing some pretty radical things. And I don't know. I've said, I think since being here a number of times, I started using the phrase fine print. Like, spirit work is great, but make sure you check the fine print. Like, there's every kind of spell that you do is some sort of a contract, a spell contract, a spirit contract. And you don't always know what the implications of doing that are. So the implications of our radical change, or rather the radical change is an implication of our relationship with Hecate, mine in particular, and then the radical shift and its many subsequent changes in our life are just kind of a downstream effect of deciding we wanted to live a magical, radical life and being kind of game for what comes next.
Awesome. Oh, thank you. And that, I mean, you taking me through the thread of notes that I have pulled from your many articles. I don't know which to go to first. We got, and you say Hecate or Hecate. What is the actual? I keep sounding like I feel like I'm not saying her name correctly and disrespecting her.
I went back and forth with the C or the K because I thought the K looked cooler, but then the C is like the Greek-ish version or whatever. And then at some point or another, I had a thought pop into my head, a sort of a Hecate comment that like no one can pronounce her name. It's what I mean, like there is not really a current derivative. Ancient Greek is a long way from what we say right now anyway, so like C, K, whatever makes you feel good. As long as you're worshiping the dark goddess, she's good with it.
Nice, okay, cool. She will respond eventually.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Cool. Well, okay, so on Hecate, you write, my work with Hecate had taken the center stage, as you had mentioned previously, and that she is effectively the tripartite lunar deity at the center of your cosmology in general. You see Hecate as the connector of all things, the communicator between here and beyond, operating at all levels of our reality. The mythology of Hecate shows her to possess a protective mothering instinct and to have the somewhat unique ability to move freely between heaven, earth, and the underworld. She's able to descend without concern into the treacherous land of the dead in search of the missing Persephone and retrieve her. Your article also includes the fantastic step-by-step way that anybody could begin building a relationship with Hecate. Mm-hmm. I would like to know more about your growing relationship with Hecate. And you said you worked with her a lot. There's a lot of fine print involved. But how would you recommend others engage? What fine print should we all look out for?
So fine print, I think, is just part of spirit communication in general, and certainly, and I view magic as essentially like a reciprocal transaction of energy, like you do with any kind of person. You share some information, you get some information back. You share some gossip, you get some gossip back. You give and get in any kind of an interaction. So in that sense, that's how I mean transactional. There's always going to be something that you are doing on behalf of the spirit. And hence the fine print. Like sometimes you ask and you don't know, and you just accept whatever there is, and then the spirit gets what they want on the backside of that. Sometimes it's a contract that you work out, right? But just as a side note, I think there is always that element, whether or not it is with Hecate. But in working with Hecate, I think if you're a very witchy type of person, Hecate has a lot to offer. And I mean that either in the male or female. Obviously, I'm a guy. I think of myself as having more masculine rather than more feminine energy as a human being. But the dark goddess and the dark feminine energy that she represents is less like Aphrodite or even like the mothering instinct of like a Diana or something, but more just I liken Hecate to dark energy. It's the invisible but obviously potent interconnections between all things that we can't even really fathom, but obviously whatever that is exists in some kind of a way because it has impact on the universe. Like you can see its shadow, but you can't make it out exactly. However, it is everywhere and it is all things and it is necessary for all things to interact. It is the force, right? Like that's kind of how I view the dark feminine, because if you think of the supernal triad, you have the essence, the male essence is one of the inserting, right? The adding of creative energy into the universe. But into that, it has to go somewhere. There has to be a vessel for its reception. Otherwise, there would be no way for the yang to go somewhere. The yin has to receive. And so that's the dark energy. That's the dark feminine. And dark because it's mysterious. Dark because it's vast. And light is the masculine and creative energy. And dark is the receptive and whatever. The unknown that can then house the single point of focus that is the masculine energy creating into the universe at that moment, intimidating whatever the energy is, right? So both are essential. And if we look at like the human version of this, like while the human male might do the creative impulse, as we would say, he doesn't have any means of accomplishing anything without the feminine reception of that, right? Like it's a short conversation. So it doesn't, the ultimate power there is actually feminine. They need us for some things, but we need them pretty much for everything
else.
Right. So the power that comes from the dark feminine is all of the unknown power. It's all the unknown unknowns in the universe, right? That's why dark is, because it is obscured. It is too mysterious. It is unknowable. And it is not single-pointed, whereas when you're creating, it is a focusing of energy. There's a diffusion of all things being able to interconnect with each other. And that is, I think, what Hecate and the supernal feminine, right? I think that's what represents. Now, interesting point, on the Tree of Life, that's where you would probably put, in Banah is where you might associate Saturn, but kind of that like grandmotherly Saturn energy, which is very Hecatean in nature. So I think that there has been some confluence of myths and histories in that. But interesting point, the moon and Saturn kind of create the bounds of the celestial sphere. You know what I mean? Because you have the sublunary, and then you have everything between lunary and the outer bounds that are personally related planets. So there's some kind of like reflection between Saturn as Banah and the darker Hecate as Banah as well. Side note, that's for the super nerds in the room. But I can
looking
see
at my tree right now. Yes.
I can see the two conflating for that reason. Like there's enough similarities between that kind of restricting bound of the universe, and beyond that is the unknown. That's where the Leviathans are, right? Like past Saturn is where the big scary eldritch horrors are, right, in the celestial sphere, right? And within the sublunary sphere, we have the protection of the lunary mother. So you can kind of see how that projects up the field. But anyway, that energy that we think of as Banah, which is the receiving energy of all things, is what Hecate is kind of all about. And just from a mythological standpoint, you have Hecate as the matron of witches, right? Like Hecate likes to get down with witchery. So you have this force that is effectively magic. Like the way that magic works is through the unseen connections between all things. Hecate is kind of the unseen connection between all things in this cosmology of mine, right? And you can even trace that, not necessarily the name Hecate, though, the Egyptian Hekas, to the concept of magic and of making things happen by unseen connections prior to the Hellenistic astrological or whatever revival or new understanding of it. And then somewhere in there you have like the Dark Mother, whatever you want to call her, right? Because it was like Eshkregal and so forth even before that. But there is this feral mother that is kind of big and scary, that sometimes appears as a warrior goddess. Sometimes she appears as like the Queen of Hades. Sometimes she appears as a sort of loving mother, but also kind of a like doesn't take your shit mother. Definitely like, oh, Persephone, and drag your ass back out of Hades. You know, there's some there's a little bit of like seriousness and judginess in it, and also witchy ways of going about doing things. In the only Hecate can go from the celestial to Hades, right? Hermes can cross the Styx, but drops you off on the other side. He doesn't like go down into Hades and throw down and talk to Pluto like, look, I need you to do this. Whereas that's something that Hecate, as a Titan, I suppose, has the right to do. She's also the ruler of Tartaros, so there's some binding aspects of Hecate that are baked into the literature, like to the understanding of what she is. So she has this ability to traverse everything, and she has the essence of being in between everything. And if you think about like just in the celestial side, you have Hecate as many lunar aspects, right? The polymorphous Hecate is the many faces of the moon. The moon moves more quickly between the other celestials than any other celestial body does, and so she, even more than Hermes, is like a messenger between them all, and on this like constant and interconnecting kind of basis, meaning that what she's not just carrying the message around like Hermes does, but she's touching everything to kind of keep eyes on it, right? Zeus is very deferential to Hecate and all of the mythology. So, and because like they worked out a deal that she allowed him to then imprison all of the rest of the Titans, the sort of primal forces of nature. And so Hecate was like the remaining primal force of nature that can then, in conjunction with because you got the feminine and the masculine in that, right? You got Zeus and you have Hecate as these sort of balancing yin and yang forces at that supernal level. So it's sort of like without Hecate's help, Zeus wouldn't have become Zeus, king of the gods. And that's why I say like there is you have to have the vessel before you can have that masculine influence. So whether you're a woman or a man interfacing with it, what you're doing is you're tapping into the most primal force, the dark energy of magic, and perhaps of reality. Like I'm not trying to put her in a box, but certainly when we work with her magically, which she's very open to, you are weaving the strands of fate. Like you're talking directly to the fates and asking for preferential treatment. And so it's like any other form of spirit communication. I just find it to be exceptionally effective. And it's everywhere, right? Like you've got great celestial magic that you can work with it. You've got earthbound magic that you can work. You've got the subterranean, the chthonic magic, where most of her popular awareness is based on that, right? But she's actually like this very strong celestial player and the mother of all things in general. It's because the moon, everything having to do with the moon, she rules fertility, she rules growth, right, over and over again. And so if you are entering into this, why? I just explained. Because you can touch everything and you can have one system for doing so. You can play with celestial, play whatever. Also, it works very well. And she is essentially like the transactions are simple and straightforward. So that's the why. Why would you do this? Because you can talk to her, you will get a straight answer back. It's easier than working with, like Venus. When I worked with Venus, it was like give, in hope and try to make her feel right, and then something comes out of it, and you don't know what it's going to be, right? and so
like me in middle school. Yeah, come on, maybe if I buy you something, maybe.
Right, exactly. It's just chasing her. That's the fun of it, right? But with Hecate, it's like I want to do this thing. What's it going to take? She's like this. You go, fuck. All right. Wow. Do I want that? So it becomes, in a positive sense, more workable magic because it's less fluffy and diffuse or whatever. It's much more specific. That has been my experience of it. She doesn't fuck around. And then the how, with any spirit communication, with any kind of spiritual transaction, give, then ask. And that's partially because of essentially paying it forward. Everybody likes you more if you meet them with a gift. Everybody likes you more if you offer more than you ask. That's just universally true, and I mean with spirits and any dimensional creatures, whatever. Everybody understands milk and cookies, right? But it works on me. It literally works.
Yeah, you brought me a gift. Come on in. Yeah,
come on in. Let's be friends. So, right. And you like to work with people that you like, and you like more the people that you like working with, and so that's how relationships develop, just sort of in general. With Hecate, the specific things that you would give her are fairly well documented, but it's easy enough to ask and get a response. I found that she was, this may be sort of like a revival time for her as well, because I see other people getting interested in her because of what I've said or because of other things, and then they come to me with questions that are like, I happen to have the answer to that. Well, that's very strange. I wonder why I needed to know that at some point, right? Like, it's obvious that she's getting people, not just me, but lots of people who are on this vibe, riding this wave or whatever, to do more right now. So I don't think it would be hard. I think she'd be very responsive. One of my friends, the one I was talking about earlier, actually had been introduced to Hecate last year. We had an energy working session, and I saw, like, I guess, like a partially activated kundalini. There was a lot of like dark wavy energy coming off of that area, right? And so I sort of woke her up to that, and I was like, I know somebody who can work on that with you. Like, I've got the perfect spirit for you. And so we did a Hecate working together, like on the next new moon. And ever since then, she's been like on the train. She's been having good results with, and is constantly, oh, Hecate told me this the other day. And so it did not require years of offerings and so forth. It was pretty straightforward. But I would say, work on the new moon. You do Depanon first. So Depanon is an ancient Hecate-oriented day of offering where you would take food out for the poor and you would leave it at the crossroads, because that is where like the statue would be with a little bit of offering, and then they could leave the plates there, and then the poor people would come and eat the offering food, and that was kind of understood that that's what was going to happen. And so there was a taking of your excess and putting it out that happened under the new moon. Maybe because the lights were up, I don't know, but like that just happened in conjunction with Hecate. So that one, and you don't have to feed the poor with it necessarily. You can just leave some food at the crossroads. That's generally what it's for. But I start with obviously a fire, because I can always have a fire going here, and awesome. Make your circle. I have in that article that you were talking about a very specific ritual that you can follow if you want to get a good solid opening. It's sort of like an Orphic hymn. It's a PGM prayer that is pretty intense, and it'll get the job done, right? So if you follow my ritual, which puts that on a circle and puts it into context, then you're set for what you need to do to open. And then once you're speaking with Hecate, once the floor is open, you just give the offering. And I often, again, I wouldn't petition, and I often for Depanon don't have an ask except to be brought more into alignment with Hecate or something like that. Because what you're trying to do is sort of prime the engine with your early offerings. And then once you have that relationship, you get a better quality, a better clarity of response. And I refer to this as fidelity, like the strength of the signal, if you will. And so the first couple of times you're tuning the dial and getting some feedback, and it's like, oh, that was better. I did something, and that one was more intense. I felt that more. And so you do that a few times until you feel the dark motherly energy, and you'll know when you know. And when that is consistently available, then you can start asking for things. So you don't have to wait for the next new moon, but I would kick it off on the new moon, and my petition would be a statement of intent to connect with and establish communication and regular interaction with Hecate as a matron, right? Someone who's going to be called on for magical work. And she'll be like, yeah, I like that. So then you do that. I did it every day for a year just to prime the engine when I was first getting started. I don't think you need to do that. I think I had to, for my own reasons, I had to work through some things during that time. But I think that if you started something that aggressively, it would be a few weeks in and you'd be like, your hair would be getting blown back. Crows start talking to you and shit. But, if you wanted to be more passive, you could just do Depanons. You could maybe do, once a week an offering and a small prayer. And you'll notice that things will start to happen. What I love about working with her is you get fairly physical and real manifestations of the magic. Not necessarily in ways that everyone around you is going to be like, whoa, what happened? But is that bird looking at me? Happens more and more and more, especially at first. That doesn't happen nearly as much to me now because she's just like, psh, don't do that. But I had conversations with crows many times. They've followed me to work and all kinds of weird shit when I was getting started, because she's like, yep, testing, you can hear me now. There's connection going. So it will not be strange. It will not be hard. I mean, it will not be difficult to establish the connection. It will not be difficult to tell that the connection has been established. Some weird shit will happen. It'll probably involve black dogs, black crows. You can look up the significations of Hecate, and you will be amazed, I suppose. You should just expect that that's going to happen. And a few weeks in, that should be the norm. At which point you're going to be propositioned with something. Once the communication is good, she's like, good, now that you can hear me well, this is what you should do. And you may go, the fuck, I did not ask for that. Or maybe you have something that you come with, and she's like, yeah, I can do that for you. I'm gonna need you to do this for me, because that transactionality is in effect, and it is clear, like, if you want that thing, what are you gonna give me, right? So working with Hecate is very much a working with. Sometimes I feel like I'm just praying to or whatever, but this is far more interactive and engaging, and sometimes you have homework. Even, I don't know what I am now, 7 years in or something like that, whatever it is. There are times when I'm like not getting the things I'm asking for, because the response I'm getting is like, you still haven't done the thing, like you have not paid me for what I gave you last, so how am I going to give you more new things? And I think that experience has taught me that that's in effect with a lot of spirits, but it's just a lot less documented. She's like, no, I'm not going to give you that until you do the thing that you said you were going to do. Whereas other spirits might just, I'm not going to respond to you anymore or whatever. She's like, no, bitch, this is the thing. So,
at least she doesn't leave you on red, yes.
Yeah, right, exactly. You know where you stand with her. It'll like come over creeping like, oh, I forgot to do that thing, shit. So I have never had any kind of unfortunate thing. I'll make sure that's clear. Like, there's a lot of complications that my life has taken on that I roughly am okay with. I have become more okay with the responsibilities that are involved in the things that I asked for, or that I didn't know that I was asking for. But I haven't ever had anything like, oh, something bad happened, she demonized my life. Nothing like that. It's not infernal. It's just really effective magic, and effective magic changes your life. And then you have new things that you have to learn about and do, and that's part of magic actually working. I remember many times doing sigils for like small things back in the day, and then checking on them 6 months later and be like, yeah, I guess, sure, right, all right, yeah, kind of, because it was a small ask and it like kind of happened or whatever. And now I'm like, we definitely moved to the jungle. We definitely started farms, no doubt about that one, right? It definitely did not happen on its own. There was magic involved in that. So I don't know, is that a sufficient enough?
Yes, oh my goodness, cool. That's fantastic, and thank you. I mean, especially for all the guideposts and continuing on how-tos. What was the name of that particular day that you had mentioned for people to begin work?
Deiphnon, I think.
Cool.
Maybe the H is not real. But anyway, Deipnon perhaps. But Depnon is the tradition, and it's just of taking the bounty and leaving it at the crossroads.
Awesome. And it's also, I appreciate the firsthand account of, hey, look, it's not infernal. She might not be happy until you do the thing that you've agreed to do, but it's not like she's going to curse your life.
Right, no.
You just, you entered into an agreement, just like with any, and that is a great frame, just like with anybody. You sign up to do a job, you got to do the job before you get paid. You got to go pick up the couch where it's going to be delivered. Otherwise, you're not going to get your couch.
Right.
It's a clear and down-to-earth frame that is easily engageable with. No, thank you. That's from my perspective, Hecate has been very dark and mysterious and hard for my mind to wade into. So that was unlike just about anything else I've come across and initially been like, well, I don't understand it, so no. Thank you. That's great. That is great. And it's great to know that, she's open and, again, ready to receive and say, nah, not until this. That's huge.
There's not exactly training wheels, but she is very kind. As she's like a mentor that is gentle on you unless you need the harshness, she's not guaranteed to be gentle, but it's not like she's trying to hurt your feelings or anything. She's like, come on, go be a real wizard, grow up, do the thing. And so she prompts you in much more, I guess, literal ways than some of the well, I tried it and it didn't work. Like, I know why it didn't work. We talked about it. I got clarity on it. And maybe that doesn't happen to you at first because you lack some of the tools for making the communication obvious. Like, working with tarot, with spirits, is a huge unlock. Like, if you can figure out how to channel spirit communication. Because something happens in your head, you're like, was that spirit communication or was that last night's television show? What? Or was that something I saw on Twitter, right? Like, it's hard, especially in this world of so many thoughts that aren't our own, that penetrate our minds, like which ones are spirit and which ones are not, is a super important thing to learn how to discern. And tarot is just a very cut and dry way to go about that. Like, you can use it for expounding on things, what was that about? Tell me more about what that was about, right? Or did I understand that or not? Like you can, yes or no, I did get that, or no, I didn't get that. Was that spirit communication? No, it was not. Okay, that was last night's dinner. You can, you can clear up those things by using tarot with it. And so I suggest that to anyone. Get comfortable with using tarot for yourself, not necessarily having to give readings to everybody or whatever, but to read it for yourself. And you will get better work, more clarity, more precise kind of responses from spirits, because it's not weird images that fly through your head when you're trying to meditate and you're like, was that or wasn't that real? You can use tarot to make sure that it was or wasn't. But with Hecate, because she has this divinatory aspect too, like she has so many aspects, I could say that with every different thing and still be honestly true. I mean, Matt Aron put together like 400 or more of the epithets of Hecate. It's a great post. Just go search like Hecate epithets, you'll find it. And it's just like a compilation of everything Greek and then interpretation. And it's awesome because like, oh cool, now I can just call on that specific aspect of Hecate in this ritual. Like I can take something out of PGM, rip out that name, put in this name, now I can use that for this new thing. Because it's like the Swiss Army knife of spirits, right? Like she has all these different faces, like the moon. But in the divinatory, right, in working with the tarot, you have her benefit as the one who is connected and sees all of the things and knows what you don't know. She is also the tripartite fate, right? So the fates. So she understands how things all connect together and then can explain that to you. But like I said, she can be very literal with you too. So if you want to work with her magically, you can ask her for clear communication to bless this conversation and have it with you through tarot. Then you can just like have a conversation back and forth using tarot with Hecate. And it's true with any spirit, but like it's great with Hecate.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you. And actually, I mean, you bring up tarot. I would love to go more into tarot and all of your articles are just fantastic reads. You've also written one on spirit communication that I would like to quote from heavily. But let's hit up tarot first.
Okay.
Because you had brought it up, and it's a wonderful segue. When it comes to tarot, there were a couple, especially I think it's the 10 tips for getting better at tarot. But at least 2 of them popped up for me in particular. Oh, yeah, and before we go into it, the cards are an oracle. They are not your fairy godmother or patron saint, as you say. That is also a great frame to hold on to. It's not going to hold your hand. It's going to point towards stuff. But you've got to give it the right kind of set and setting for it to point, for it to be helpful. And you say in this article, which is great, I will often frame these sorts of questions like, what happens if I do X? What will the outcome be if I do X? This gives you a tightly focused question that can still generate relatively broad answers. Questions like this are good for establishing the general areas of concern related to your topic. You may have some follow-up to do, but these types of questions can help sketch out the territory so that you know what else to ask. And you had mentioned in your experience you used a lot of tarot. Do you still engage with tarot in that same way? Tell me some of your tarot experience.
Yeah, I mean, I've probably learned a few new tricks since then, but
cool.
I learned to trust it during that period where we were figuring out everything with the house, with the move, this took years, right? So there's lots and lots and lots of sessions where we're like, I don't know what the fuck to do. What am I going to do? Let's ask the cards. And like some real life-changing decisions. When you make a decision with hundreds of thousands of dollars exclusively based on a tarot reading, like you're not fucking around anymore. You believe this, you trust this, like you're making life choices on it. And after that point, I'm like, whew, glad that worked. Okay, we can trust it. We can like really, really trust this. But there were some serious ones, like right away when we moved down, we found this land within maybe like 6-7 months. And in order to like put a hold on it, you put some earnest money down, right? Mm-hmm. And you put the earnest money down, you're now locked into this contract. But Mexico's not a very straightforward place to buy land. And so it was not possible for us to complete the transaction for like 9 months. And during that time, our earnest contract ran out. And so we'd either lose the not insignificant amount of earnest money or hurry up and buy the damn land, right? But we can't buy the land, legally speaking. So I don't want to lose the land. This is the land. We've done all this magic, and like there's so much that has gone into this selection. I was like, this is it. We're all in. So what we had to do is sort of invent an escrow system with our lawyer where we like paid it in advance in lieu of something happening. And even that date passed because it was 9 months, right? And so it paid. all of the money for the land, like $100,000 went out the door for the house and for the land rather. And we still did not have a way to record it as ours for 6 months after that, like a really long time. And at the time where we're like, we either have to send all the money or lose the, whatever, it was like 15% down. We did tarot. We're like, what happens if we send this money? And so yeah, we use that to great effect. And now I'm like, yeah, of course. I work in the office here in my house with one other person who's my account manager for our marketing agency. And she is also magically inclined. She's the person who was doing the Hecate working. Cool. And so we were talking about whether or not the strategy that we were doing was good. I'm shooting some videos for work, and I'm like, oh, I kind of hate it. Do I have a reason to hate it, or am I just being a bitch, right? And so she's like, ask the cards. I go, all right, I love our office. This is cool. Let me pull out the cards in the middle of the workday and see what's up. So I do a reading, and sure enough, I was being a bitch. And so I read her. It was like, this is with the Tarot de Marseille. So you've got like the 6 of Swords, which is like the flower surrounded by a bunch of mean-looking swords, with the garden on the outside, which is sort of like isolation, right? I had the 5 of Coins, which represents a movement of money, a change of things, right? And then I had the Page of Swords, and I was like, oh, I'm being a bitch. So it was like, yeah, I feel like immature, and like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay, yep, that's what's happening right now. So I still very much use it in that way. We've decided the material for our house based on, not one tarot reading. Another thing I said in that article, I think, is like, do it until it becomes statistically significant, right? Like, yeah, one time, maybe you flip a coin or whatever. You do that shit 10 times in a row and you get increasingly annoyed responses from tarot that you're asking the same question. It's like, okay, I kind of have to believe that's real because it's incredibly consistent. I got this 20 more times, and it's just going to start calling me more names in the process, right? I'm going to get less flattering cards out as I do. But if you can do that, it's fucking real. Like, it's real. There's no, you can't flip a coin 10 times and always have it be like consistently the same thing. So it's past the point where you have any kind of normal explanation for it. And we did this with the material we wanted to use on the house because, as it turns out, building a house is very expensive. And because of the Maya train that they were building at the same time, it was increasingly expensive. So we were trying to find ways to, squeeze blood from our stone. And here we have a sargassum problem at the beach. There's like mountains and mountains of sargassum throughout the summer. So there's a lot of this stuff around. Some dude says he's figured out how to make bricks with sargassum. And I just have like a funny feeling about it because it's nasty stuff. And I'm like, even if it's been processed, like what's the energetic resonance of this brick or whatever? Let's just test this. I feel weird. Let's do some tarot readings. And it was going to be like half the cost of what we ended up having to do instead. And it looked nice. Like, it looked pretty. It was going to be great. We all got excited about it. The construction guys was all like super excited. And then I had to tell them the next day, like, we can't do it. We absolutely cannot do it. And like, why? And my wife, who's not nearly as shy about saying this out loud as I am, is like, we got 10 really bad tarot readings. so then I
cards, baby. Sorry.
It's in the cards, whatever. But like, it wasn't just like the tower. I mean, it was like the death card over and over and over. And I was like, I don't want to have cancer from these bricks. Like, fuck this shit. I'm not going to use it. So yeah, like I would trust that more than I would trust my family's advice by like 100 times over, because it just tends not to say things because I want to hear it, and it doesn't fluff it up at all. Like, you just get the answer, and I use it whenever I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Awesome. Oh, massively helpful. Thank you. I mean, there's another tip that you give: start broad, go narrow. But you kind of already touched upon that. That's just a great piece of advice. Yeah. Whittle it down until the stats are kind of unequivocal and you know what's going on to a much greater degree, and the cards keep insulting you more and more clearly.
Especially if you're talking about something unknown. Like, if you have a very specific question, then just ask a positive and a negative. Ask it 2 ways so that if you get a consistent response and you ask it differently, like, the odds of that happening are also very small. So like, if you're like, I just need to know, do I do this or do I do that? And so you go, what happens if I do this? And you get that story, right? And you go, what happens if I don't do this? And you get the other story. And then you can just flip it and say the sort of reverse of that. what doesn't happen if I do that, or come up with some slightly different way of asking it. And again, you get to that like awkward levels of consistency. Like, all right, how am I? It's like having 5 people come up to you and say the exact same thing to you. You'd be like, the universe is trying to tell me something. Same with the cards. Like, do it until you're convinced. But if you have a clear question, you don't necessarily have to start broad. But if you're like, I don't know what to do with my life. Okay, well, start broad, and then as you get some like, I think he means this, ask some specific questions. Is that what that meant? What does that imply about this? What does that imply about that? What happens if I do this? And then you get to something that's more workable. If you go have a reading with someone, it's mostly junk, because they're going to give you like the broadest answer possible, because like that's easy and safe. And then if you have follow-up questions, they'll be like, that'll be another $75, right? So. But like the way that I give readings, we're like, what do you want to know? And like, we got an hour and a half. Let's figure this out. Let's like just ask questions and it's usually like 30 minutes later, they're like, I do not want any more advice.
I get it. I get it, cards.
Yeah. Right. So, but if you start broad and you narrow in, it is helpful. Yeah.
Cool, man. Oh, fantastic. So, okay. I had a thought. Could you actually ask tarot, how is this a better way to use tarot? If I use it this way or if I use it this way, could you actually meta your experience with tarot a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can meta your relationship through spirit in the same kind of way. Like, I feel like we're not getting a good connection. How can I, what offerings can I give her? How can I do better? That's a first protocol. Like, the first thing you should do is get good connection. And so, yeah, sure. Especially if you're in kind of a learning phase. Though I will say, do 100 readings, and then you don't have to worry about that. Like, do 100 readings on nothing, on anything that is a true or false, so that it can be verified. That's kind of the catch, is you need to be able to tell if the answer that you got was true, was real, right? And then if you get consistently real and true responses that can be verified, then you can trust it to ask something that you don't know about. And then when the answer you get back, like, yeah, okay, that's probably going to end up being real also, because I've had 100 out of 100. But tuning the deck isn't the right way to think about it. It's like tuning yourself to the deck. It's attuning to a deck. And so what I typically do when I start with tarot is I spread them all out around me, and I'll let them tell the story. Some of them will tell them like from ace through king or whatever, and the imagery is connected in some kind of sense. So I'll look at them like that, and then I'll put them in different places. And one by one, I'll go through the card and I'll scan it. I learned this from, I think, a book called Terosophy. I hope that's true. But I'm like, read the card, like visually scanning it down, and then back up, and then I put the card down, and I try to replay the same thing in my head, and I just look at the card until I can like imagine it exactly, shape rotate it in my brain. And then you go to the next card, and the next card. And you may need more. It's like, there's a lot of cards in a deck, right? To do that 72 times in a row is intense. It takes a few hours. But if you do that over several days, the same thing happens. But if you go through and you like not just memorize, but like deeply feel each of the cards energetically and know every little nuance about them visually, then when they show up in a reading, you're not having to like, oh, what card is that? Right? You know it, you know what it looks like, you know how that's different from this other tarot deck you have, you feel it a lot more. So if you go through those two things, you scan every single card, and then I think that the last part of it was once you had scanned it in your mind, once you could like paint it, you like erased it so that you sort of did the reverse. It's like you say A to Z and then Z to A, right? Like so that your brain can see it from both directions. At which point, like, you know every card that comes out, you know at least, maybe not the meaning, but like the visual of the card and what it means to you. So then you take that and you do 100 readings on verifiable things. You're going to have no more problems with tarot. You can, oh yeah, I can rip that out and do a reading anytime at that point because your fidelity with your deck is very high. I think of the tarot as effectively a spirit. Sometimes it is a spirit that helps you communicate with other spirits, like mushrooms kind of does that too, you know? Cool. Like there are sort of psychopompic kind of spirits and so forth, and I think that tarot is at least an egregore that has enough intelligence baked into its cards and also into how people have interacted with it, that it's quite good at that meta thinking. Like you can use tarot to understand yourself. You can use tarot to understand other spirit communication. You can use tarot to understand the cycles of time and so forth by what's going to happen if this happened, right? You can tune yourself to the deck and then you're just reading the universe.
Tarot, absolutely. Definitely an incredible tool and spirit intelligence to engage with for better living, for better understanding.
For sure.
That's fantastic. We need more tarot in our lives. So, okay, moving on to spirit communication in general. you write quite a bit about spirit communication, and this was one of the first articles that I engaged with on your website most recently, and it just resonates so much so with a lot of what's being discussed now in the current milieu of NHI and plasmoids and all that. I mean, you write about it in particular. You open the article by saying, with all these talks of aliens, devil worship, and the end of the world, great. It seems the veil between us and the unknown is thinning, and it might be a relevant time to upskill in matters of the spirit. It's disappointing that we're willing to consider ideas as outlandish as communicating with visitors from distant star systems without considering how long the spiritual traditions of the world have described exactly such encounters, and those that can't see the underlying spiritual nature of the current events will be ill prepared for the intensity of the weirdness to come. I would love just to get an expanded view of your perspective there as we go into more of the... I mean, the article is so good. People go to postmugglism.com. It's incredible.
Thank you. I do like that. That was pretty good shit.
Yes.
I think that has stood the test of a couple of years' time, for sure. We are in a much weirder world than we were in when I wrote that article, and especially around these things. And all I can say is, I am once again asking you to please go read Jacques Vallée. Please. It will
Jacques
fix
Vallée, all right.
everything. Everything.
Cool.
Because... The difference between fae, angels, aliens, and a certain portion of spirits is not a Venn diagram. It's a fucking circle. We are talking about the same things. I was trying to make like a poignant one statement thing that kind of wrapped it up for me to my wife earlier, and I was like, think about the things. Like, if you read Vallée, what he's done is just researched a billion different encounters of high strangeness and then looked at what's similar between them, compare and contrast them, right? Because he's a computer science nerd. And that's a genius way to do it, because it's kind of that, like, your individual experience is just weird and nonsensical, but if you map everyone's, it's like, oh, there are certain themes about this weird and nonsensical shit that happens that we can kind of stitch back together. And if you do, like, all of the alien communication that is not filtered through some bullshit government thing, but is like, some dude said this happened to me. That stuff is like, they told me to love my neighbor and to be nice to the earth and to protect the nature. And I'm like, who else only ever talks about that?
Spirits. Yeah.
And more specifically, the fae. Like, the fae care very greatly about the natural world and not much a fuck about anything else. Like, it's useless to work with them to, like, get more money or something. Like, they do not enjoy that at all. They are not going to help you do that. They will help you very much in growing your crops and protecting your animals. Like, I have an unlimited number of stories that prove this to me, because the fae are very real and everyone knows it here. Like, it's just a thing. Everybody has spirit houses because you fucking do that. You do that if you want to have a good time. And so my experiences they don't sound weird to my neighbors. They're like, yeah, of course, because you don't want that to happen. To everyone else in the world, there's just, like, there's so much of a loss of this tradition of maintaining spirit relationships, is what I would call it, right? It's fundamental to the magic that we have done since the very beginning of time, that we know that we are our neighbors here. We share this reality, and not necessarily physically around the campfire like you and me would sit, but like the same interdimensional space in some kind of a way. And the fae seem to be very dedicated to the stewardship of that. Like, if you anger the fae, it's probably because you did something with the land that they don't approve of. Mm-hmm. If you are friends with the fae, it's probably because you take good instruction. You take recommendations from the fae about what you do with the land. And everybody is like, oh, don't mess with the fae. And I'm like, well, did you listen first? Like, did you take them seriously with what they wanted? I got a great story about one of my other permaculture friends that I have found through marketing stuff, actually. And so I was reluctant to cross certain conversational boundaries with him, because I don't run in that circle over in that world, right? I keep those two things very separate. And so he and I were explaining our experiences here, living in the, he lives up closer to Merida, but same, like the same rules apply, same jungle. And he talked about, like, yeah, he pissed off the local Alush, is what we call them. And some people think they're like little hairy dudes, which, if you follow the, like, cryptoid phenomena at all, is very fayish also.
Like, gnome, a duende kind of thing?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And again, I think that's just aspects of different manifestations of effectively the same thing in different places, because they like to keep it weird, you know? I have not seen the little hairy man. I have heard that as a consistent theme to stories around here. But it's like, I don't get haunted by them. That's not the kind of relationship that I have because I'm not pissing them off. I am coming out and like paying it forward. Before we moved in, we were like give long before we got here. So by the time also we're like white people in the jungle where the white people are not from. So I had to do some teasing my way in here to begin with. And as a result, we've had great relationships with the Fae. But there are definitely like warnings that you should pay attention to. And when that happens, like there was a boa constrictor out trying to get for one of my chickens the other day, and I'm like, okay, I guess it's time to give offerings to the Fae again. That's you're right. I'm sorry, it's been a minute. So the consistency of that relationship and the maintenance of it is very real, and it's very transactional. But the obligatoriness of relationships, to like go back to the high strange, right? The obligatoriness of relationships with any of the high strange, like when aliens come down and they're like, I got to give you these weird buckwheat pancakes. Have a nice day, sir. And you're like, but I need from you a glass of water, and I will not leave until that happens. This is a real story. This is one of the police stories, right? And you're like, what the fuck is that about? Like, what is it? It's about an exchange. It is about transactionality. It's about this reciprocal relationship, the transactionality of spirit communication I've been talking about. Like, they know that they have to engage with us. And they're very frustrated with us that we don't know that we have to engage with them. We're just like this shitty neighbor who pretends that they don't exist. and so they're just like over it with humanity in general. And so when they have interactions with us, it's usually unpleasant. Like my friend who cut down the tree and then 4 of his dogs died. Not like all at one time, like cut down the tree and then the dog died. And he was like, well, fuck you then. I'm going to do something else. And it's something else. And then another dog died and eventually got tired of losing his friends. And he's like, falls into line and does what the Alush want. And you're like, some of us need to learn lessons the hard way, I guess. But also, like, that's a real thing. And if you, in your life, have ever had, like, some weird shit that happened at your house that you couldn't explain and whatever, and it took so much effort to fix, like, did you sit by your fireplace with tarot and ask the house what the fuck it wants? Like, what's going on? Why is this not working? Because if you did, I guarantee you would have less of those chaotic things happening. And that's because we don't remember that spirit engagement is a necessity. It's not a privilege or something. It's like, we're here. They're right there. They're engaging with us all the time. We are getting messages from them. We're like, la, 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 la. So when we shift into a more receptive state, we get a very different kind of relationship with them. And the high strangeness is like showing this to people who think that like aliens are coming down to, alien Earth us or whatever, and aliens aren't in ships. They've been here they've been here. They're always here. And that thing that we're experiencing is like, well, our computers are good enough now that we can read things that make the spiritual semi-visible. Like we can see the shadows of the spirit world moving in the real world. And so now that we can't deny it, we can't just like, I didn't see that. That burning bush isn't burning and talking to me. Like that's what we've been doing for years, thousands of years, right? Now that we're like, I don't know, they're kind of fucking real. Well, we don't have any way to explain them. And so I think that this high strange engagement is like doing that Hecate shooing kind of thing. Like but instead of shooing, they're like baiting us along with these weird little experiences that make us what? Chase them, spread the word, and not really be able to understand what they're doing to us, but yet be moved in a direction which is undeniably more receptive to plasmoid, alien, intelligent spirits, whatever, right? You call them one thing, I'll call them another thing, but this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a preternatural and interdimensional intelligence that we think is weird because of our limited perspective of the universe. And they think it's weird that we can't go back in time and realize that this has been happening forever. And so now we have to do weird new things to teach us these same basic, like, I give you a thing, you give me a thing. We can communicate, right? Like we've exchanged something, so now we can communicate. Now you have special psychic powers. Now, like, so there's some kind of like an initiatory experience to it and a weird exchange reciprocity thing, and that much is consistent throughout like all of high strangeness. Not necessarily like the giving of the buckwheat pancakes, but in some case of you do a thing, I do a thing, and then we meet and we have this wonderful thing. And like look at what's his name who does all the disclosure movies? Not the Spielberg one, but the guy who's been getting people to go off into the woods and shine up or into the desert and like shine light.
Stephen Greer.
Greer, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Greer has initiated and is now a devotee of weird alien shit, and he's indoctrinating other people. He's like been hooked. Now he is the intermediary, right? And that's how it works. That's how spirit communication works. That's what Hecate did to me. That's what it is. So I take it all and I go, this is droll. There's a better way to do this. Like, at some point, we're going to figure out that the government doesn't know shit about this, and none of the people who are being loud on YouTube know shit about it either. And like you personally can have experience with this, and you don't even have to like shine lights at the stars or whatever. Like, I highly recommend that you pick a very special time that's dedicated to the thing you want to talk to, and do a special ritual with milk and cookies, and you too can have these kind of experiences. But I don't think we need to chase aliens. Like, I'm like, whatever happens in the alien world, I'm just like rolling my eyes all the time, because whatever happens is going to be faked. And the experience is interdimensional, so non-physical in its orientation. It is primarily, like when people get abducted, most of the time they were sitting in a field somewhere and they were having an out-of-body experience. And a lot of that has actually been documented. Like, I remember the Hellier guys did like a regression thing, a fairly dangerous regression thing with someone where like he believed that he had been abducted and like he'd never had that experience before. And the lack of the physical necessity is kind of like the lack of the need for there to be physical remnants of ships and stuff. It's like, that's what our brain sees, because we know Elon Musk and we see rocket ships and we see things that are like from another dimension. We go, it must be a spaceship, it must be aliens. When it was it Ezekiel coming down out of the clouds, and like the fiery chariot and so forth. Like, what's a fucking fiery chariot versus a UFO? Like, it's some otherworldly manifestation that our tiny little human brains can be like, I guess that's what I'm looking at. I don't know. It's a hand reached out of the sky. I don't know what that is. So there's, like, the UFO flap is the perfect comparison for the chariot going into the sky. Like, into what? What? It wasn't like a rocket ship. It went into nothingness. It dematerialized or whatever, right? It moved between dimensions, That is what's happening, but we're having like Navy captains try to explain this. And of course, they speak like, spaceships.
They speak Navy, right? Yeah.
Navy, right. They don't know what a spirit is, and so that's what you get. And it's interesting if you look through time, like for a long time, all these weird things were like fairies. And then we had the like, oh, the moon is something we can go to. Now they're aliens. It's just us reflecting ourselves into the unknown, which is what we do. We pick the stars and we name them gods, and then we feel the things that they make us feel, and we personify those into beings that are aspects of the divine. So is this.
Awesome. And I do not claim to know one thing of the other over the other. I certainly have had anomalous experiences. However, I'm interested in your perspective. You write, I choose not to fuck with demons just because why would you? There's so many other things you can fuck with. Could that also, and I also don't think that aliens are demons. No.
Good.
But I think that we, like every individual in the human species, is unique and has their own personal perspective. Are there also, could there be a spectrum of perspectives and behaviors in this shared non-physical space with these beings that go by many different names, depending on how our brain is trying to play catch-up?
So the question in there was, do I think that there's a way for... I think the answer is yes, right? I very much think that yes, and I feel that's why I'm saying they're the same thing. So maybe ask me that again, because I missed the nuance of what I don't agree with or I would be questioning.
Sure. Basically, are there bad guy aliens that are taking babies out of people, whether in the astral level or not, along with amazing Fae-type beings that are like, yo, you got to work with us because we're here together?
Right.
Or are they all one and the same thing?
At a high enough level of abstraction, we are all one and the same thing, right?
Awesome.
So I think that's easy to say, but there's also like there's a little important amount of truth in that, because the place where these stories come from of angels or aliens stealing babies and all of that is... the Fae there's a historical precedent for demons stealing babies. Like, I think that's what you're referring to, is like this also has existed from whatever.
For sure.
And so I think that like possession is a real thing, but it's a very uncommon thing. And there's a certain type of energetic requirement for you to allow a thing to happen to you. And so sovereignty being what it is, spiritually, as you as the starseed interdimensional being that you really are, whatever, that doesn't get diminished by conflation with something else. And so you can fuck with demons and still be okay. Like, there are ways to do that. When I wrote that, I've adapted my thinking a little bit since then, but what I meant when I said that was basically like, if you have any concerns about that, like, you don't have to go infernal just to get something done. A lot of people are like, I have to call Paimon because my dad doesn't like me or something. And it's like, there are other ways. Just slow your roll. Don't believe what the internet tells you. There are simpler, less, complicated for your own purposes ways of doing things. And that's what I was referring to. But I lost my train of thought a little bit. But like, yes, there are bad actors, but by bad, it's more like bad for human interaction. Like, okay. I like all snakes. I don't hang out with all snakes, right? Like, we're all part of God, but some of them will bite me. Some parts of God will hurt me, and so it's more practical if I just don't fuck with them. And so, sure, there are those kind of bad actors, and that we would not enjoy the experience. And negative in any sense of what we would think is right and what we would want more of in the universe. But like, we are not God, and the duality of the universe requires the negative. And if you do any kind of fucking with Hecate on a long enough basis, you definitely get to the point where you understand, if maybe not cherish the things that negative happen to you. Like, you don't cherish losing or withering or decaying or whatever, but like, well, without that decay, you can't have new growth either. So you do have to appreciate it, and you see its purpose. You're like, but not me, not today, Satan. You play that game on a personal basis versus on like the universe needs this to exist kind of basis. I hate war and violence, but I will be violent under certain circumstances, and I'm not gonna, like, what am I gonna do? War is a thing in the world. It's gonna continue to be a thing. It performs a function in spirit that none of us particularly enjoy, but yes, it does. Like, there's probably other ways that we could get there, but we're not gonna get there that other ways. That this is what's gonna happen instead. Like, that energy is gonna come out in some kind of a way. So in that kind of a sense, like, yeah, bad actors, things you should not fuck with, things you should maybe stay away from. Things that are better to focus on is kind of more where I would go with it. And I will say that I have adapted my thinking because of that, like, everybody is part of something, and like, pestilence is important in the world. You want to have it at arm's length, right? Like, sure. There might be times like Ivy, Rune Super, she got cancer and worked with the cancer, like inspirited the cancer and had conversations with the cancer and had conversations with the chemotherapy drugs and that worked really, really well. It's like, yeah, those are bad actors, obviously, but there is a time and a place for everything in the world. And so there are times when you might need magic like that. That's probably not something that everybody needs to do on a regular basis just to, fix some fucked up thing in their life, though. So I stand by the, like, you don't have to, but also they all exist for a reason. And I'll go even further because it's a good nerd opportunity. The Geosophia books by Jake Stratton Kent, he touches on something truly profound. It's very convenient for my beliefs with Hecate too, that like all the goetic demons, because goes is a word that comes from ancient Greek. It's like or at least we know it from that heritage. It may have been before, but like they were the criers when someone would die, and the lamenters would come out and they would wail and make the sounds, and like that sound was supposed to be something that the spirit could then follow on to their resting place, the afterworld. But it also just kind of has to do with like, it's not too far to go from lamentations and wailing and using sound to create emotional resonance and therefore spiritual energy to yelling at candles. Yeah. You can squint and kind of see some kind of connection there. So the goes were the spirit communicators, right? They were the ones that knew how to, in some way or another, yell at the candles and make the thing happen. And the spirits that they were petitioning and working with are the ones that through the Catholicism and through the years were sort of vilified. They were demonized, as in turned into demons. So like demons, the 72 demons or whatever, weren't necessarily cast down from heaven. It's like, no, the Catholic Church took over and it cast them into a diabolical status, because history is written by the victor, right? So when you are now on the opposite side to the prevailing authority, which is, a very, how would I put this? Like demiurgic structure, right? So like maybe the false reality over reality that we've been locked into for a few thousand years, like that was sort of the birthplace of Gnosticism and the demiurge, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think there's something to the idea that throw out all the gods but one God that is conveniently now the only God. Isn't the only God, but it's conveniently now the only God, right? And everybody else is now a demon. And some of them were land spirits, and some of them were other elements that we had worked with previously, which have now just been demonized. So when you fuck with demons, here's what I would say. I will not be fucking with demons in a church-oriented framework, right? Which is why I like Geosophia, and while I haven't made it all the way through it and certainly not done the workings, the concept of it tapped into the sort of like original ferality of my Hecate practice. Is like Hecate existed before like the Dionysian rites and things like that. They were just like taking honey into caves and leaving bread and cookies and stuff for a long time, related to managing the dead and fertility as one thing, right? And so that is a very, I'll call it feral, like shamanic kind of original practice. And obviously the Great Mother is what we worshipped long before we had any kind of like structural magic. And so that shit goes deep. It goes way back into history, tens of thousands of years into history in its like rudimentary forms. And so I think of that as feral magic, like without all the pretense of high magic being wrapped around it. And all the high magic is wrapped around it with a bunch of like hoity-toity, self-important churchiness, right? And thus, the ones that are helpful to the demiurgic empire are angels, and the ones that are like, yeah, fuck that, I don't really work like that, are now infernal. And it's interesting because, like, not that I have a lot of Goetia in me, but from what I understand about how each of them are associated with different things, sometimes it's like things being buried in the earth. Well, is that diabolic or is that chthonic? Because from a Greek standpoint, like, things that are under the ground are chthonic. And there were chthonic entities that you would speak to about things like finding gold in the earth. So they just got demonized because, well, the church should be the one that has all the gold. You know what I mean? They just didn't want you to be able to actualize through independence. And so it became a Luciferian contract or current inside of the structure that was originally Gnostic demiurgism wrapped in a little bit of Catholicism, right? Like, not to be too harsh on the Catholics who have their own ways of getting at magic, but Saint Cyprian might agree with me that the structure is not all it's cracked up to be, right? So as an interpretation through a lens, I don't particularly like messing with. But back to earthly nature spirits, like, oh yeah, those are my homies. Like, of course, I would work with them. I would just not work with them in a commanding and beating them into submission kind of way. I would bring milk and cookies and ask nicely. That's how I would do it.
I was introduced to... sorry, keep going.
Well, the last thought I was going to say is, like, because how you call is who you get. It's not that the spirit is that different, it's the aspect that you are engaging with is.
Awesome. And that's a beautiful crystallization of that perspective. How you call is what you get. What I was simply going to add was that in my introduction to Golden Dawn style ceremonial magic, they would impress upon you, hey, you are above and always in authority of whatever spirit you're calling in, so they are below you, so you need to assert dominance, always assert dominance. And I'm like, that doesn't work for me in life.
Yeah, right.
That's weird. People don't respond that well to that.
That's a weird way to be.
Yeah, right. Hey, do the thing. Don't leave that magic square. Yeah.
Now, I get, not with specifically goetic demons, your mileage may vary, but in my magical practice in general, a nicer, softer approach has yielded me much better results. A more respectful approach is probably the better way to put that, yeah.
With spirits as with life, I think that,
Indeed.
that there's something to integrate into an everyday. And speaking of which, you write about minimum viable praxis. You have an incredible article talking about what people should be considering when they're wanting to charge their magical battery on the regular. And one of those things is that very perception of, hey, milk and cookies, let's be grateful. Let's take some time. I would love to hear more of what you practice yourself and what's good advice for the day-to-day for people who are wanting to wade into these waters and make them warm and acclimatizable to all.
That's a great opportunity for me to, I guess, add to that, because a lot has happened since I wrote that, and all of that is, I think, very accurate and a good strategy for if you live in an apartment in a city somewhere. That's a good way to go about it. I have shifted from having an essential, complicated magical praxis every day to living a magic life. There is much less separation. There's much less non-magical feeling stuff. Every morning feels really fucking magical. We get monkeys come through twice a day. We'll have 30 monkeys, monkey babies hanging out in trees and watching us play with our dogs and stuff. Everything is fucking magical here. And I don't just mean that as a cliche or something. I mean, deeply felt. It's a felt kind of magic. You get like, oh, wow, this is how we should do this. And so because of that, my praxis is much less ritualized. And yet, not like I make a fire every morning. And I enjoy that, and it's a meditative kind of experience for me. But I don't meditate all that much. I do meditate into and out of things. Like if I have a working to do, I will lower my heart rate and get my focus and things like that. But like sitting around and meditating for 45 minutes or something, why? I can just go walk around in the woods and I will have that with absolutely no effort. I have deeply learned to appreciate the benefit of tactile contact with trees and what that does to regulate. And so half of the things that we're doing to prepare ourselves for magical work are getting our own stress, our own cortisol, overwhelm, and all kinds of things out of the way, our like lack of focus to focus. So if you're in that world, like when I go to the United States, I am a fucking mess. I'm like, what? How do you do this all the time? Like I am overly sensitive to it because I don't have to like have a barrier out. I go outside, I'm like barrier free and taking everything in. And I go to the United States, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much intense energy coming at me from every side all the time. So like, it is what it is while you are burdened there. But I highly recommend, and we'll probably one day be facilitating like healing through nature, healing through time spent in nature from things like that. Like we've done retreats for ayahuasca. And after it, I was like, I think just being here is honestly like the better part of what we're offering. Like ayahuasca's awesome and you should do it. But really, you should spend some more time with trees. Get in a hammock, spend a day in a hammock staring at the trees and asking yourself important questions. And it's just amazing. Like, might as well be on a mushroom trip or something. But what you have to not have is all of the other static and distraction. So what I mean is that my practice is now like a lot more of magical living. I talk to my ducks. I go out and I have time spent with my animals. How are you today? Oh yeah, tell me about that. And then like, instead of talking to me back with words, like I get impressions of the things that they need and the whatever. That's pretty magical.
Yeah.
My wife recently had a piece of her scalp removed for like there was like a cancer mole that had to be cut out and it was deep and so like it took it all the way to bone. And let me tell you, that's terrifying because like it took like 6 months to not see her skull, right? And during this, the thing, and the doctor agrees with us, that made the greatest difference was Reiki. Our friend, Mary,
awesome.
who works with us in the office, is Reiki master, and she was given Reiki once a week. And like, you could just visibly see day before, day after, like, holy shit, that grew a lot. And so clearly, obviously, magic is happening, and I'm not having to block out the rest of the world to see that it is real. Like, it's just more real. So in addition to all the things that I said about having daily prayers and getting into a daily thing, like, you need those things when you are in an environment which is heavily non-magical. Like, it's just mundane, right? This is much less mundane. You don't need as many of those trappings. You can, I just walk out to the fire, throw some leaves in the fire, whisper a little prayer to Hecate. Yeah, okay. Do I have any questions when you go ask Tarot? Like, it doesn't take all of the lead up, where early on, and some of this is experience in moving yourself into different states, but more is not having to fight the resistance of moving into those states. Like, yeah, you have to practice it so that you can move from a conscious state to a subconscious and, you know, receptive kind of a state. But once you've done that 100 times, like, you can do that again. But all of the anxiety that's in the way first, and last night's television, and all of the things your boss is saying to you, and how you don't like that, whatever, all that shit has to get out of the way. And you can't be magical until you can get that out of the way. So all of the practice is in regulating. So my update would be like, oh my God, go touch the fucking grass. Like, spend some real time. Because if you want to spend all that time in ritual, like, you can do that ritual much more effectively if you just go sit cross-legged outside, feeling okay for 20 minutes first. Do that and call it meditation. Like, meditate while you're doing that, whatever. But I guarantee you it will be barefoot on the ground, or here, because it's all sharp rocks and ants on the ground. Go touch a tree, right? I'll go hug a tree a little bit. I go stand on roots. Like, I'll just stand and touch the tree and be like almost instantly feeling better. But we have like a massive wood wide web, right? We're in a very large forest with lots of hundreds of year old trees around. It is actually perfect here. And that's not available if you're in any kind of a city environment. I mean, even like in town, that's not available. So that's a rare privilege to have. But what you can do, and what we were doing before we moved here, when we started to realize like the impact of the garden, is like, have a garden. Have a garden that you do what I call fern gully magic in. Like, send Reiki to your plants. Plant things to bring in pollinators. call to the pollinators, like, hey, bees and Hecate, there's a little thing you can do there, you know, like there's, or just the sun. Like there's so many ways that you can do magic to enhance your place. Like you would draw a circle and you put the things on the walls, like go outside and make a magical environment for yourself outside. And if you don't have nature, make nature. Like there was an experience that I had about the same time that I got the mission statement to like go to Mexico and do all this stuff. And I was in my backyard and I audibly heard the words. I think this is the day after a mushroom trip. So like we're not peaked. We're in the pleasant come down where you start like eating meat again and maybe playing video games. And I was just sitting out in the backyard and I heard loudly, increase biodiversity. I was like, that is highly specific. What?
Wow.
What?
Awesome.
And so now that's sort of my mission, right? Like if you follow along my whole thing, that's very much what we're doing. We went to a damaged forest, a damaged jungle that was forested 100 years ago, like overforested, and we're bringing it back with more life. But at the time it was like, I left a piece of fruit out as an offering at about this time, and maybe the same day, maybe it was the day before or something. It was in this same period where this was happening. And I just noticed like a day or two later that there were no ants on the fruit at all. There was nothing. There was no life. There were a couple of birds that would land in the branches and they would fuck off, and there was nothing below. And I thought, that's weird. That's really weird. Like, you leave a piece of fruit on the ground and should have ants crawling over in 10 seconds. I've been in a picnic before. Like, what's happening in my yard? Oh my God. What did I not do? You know, and I came to understand that like I was in suburbia. They had killed this land so hard, so many times over that like there wasn't going to be that much. You know, I wasn't poisoning my land. I was, you know, if anything, I was fertilizing the compost and stuff, but not to the degree that it needed. And so we built a garden and enhanced the biodiversity in that one little space, right? And I built a pretty nice garden. 15-foot tall sunflowers that were like hanging over the wall. So no one could mistake that like there's a garden here, right? And what it did was fascinating because there was plenty of food for the bees and the birds, and so there were more bees and birds, and then everybody else's gardens got a lift as well, right? Because pollinators could cross-pollinate, because the magic that I was doing had an area of effect. And
Nice.
Also because it was so dead, it was so sterilized. You know, I mean, they kill the ground before they build the home, and they put the grass down, and like it's the only thing that's allowed to grow, basically. And still, 20 years later, like unless you have reinvested into it, nothing is changing about that. So, I found, well, I forget why we got here actually, but I feel like the seeing of the magic that you do now. That's where I was going. The how you get yourself into a place where you can do magic better, and how you can have a better praxis. If you are not gardening or doing something like that, if you don't have a natural element, you're not going out in the woods, or you're not, and I think in some cases giving back, like some strategy of reciprocating with the world to enhance your transactional spiritual relationship with all this around you. Like spirits like the natural world. They are easier to talk to in nature than they are in your closet. They are easier, it's easier to experience magic when you're not inside of a sterile ball that is, you know, manufactured by modernity. If you go to some place that is even less modern, like you will get incrementally more magic. Go to a national forest, get good and lost in a national forest, do some wicked magic shit there. It'll fucking work better. That's what I mean. So the praxis is now like, go feral. Bring yourself like, high magic is cool, whatever. You like spending hundreds of hours making your utensils for magic, like good on you. But
Look at my wand.
yeah, that's right. How impressive your wand is, don't you? But you know, some of the best magic I've ever done was outside with sticks and salt.
Cool.
Get your fingers dirty. That's my new praxis, is get your fingers dirty.
That is, I hear that you are not the first, but that is some of the most clear way to bring that about. And that was some of the advice that you had given me during our session so many years ago, which I still employ and would like to employ more so, and now have the ability to. It's interesting, though, you talking about how even just stair-stepping yourself outside of a city center, you can feel that incremental increase. In my experience when I was working in Richmond, leaving the city center alone, you could feel this shift, like, oh, I can take a full breath, finally. Yeah. There's some amazing things that happen in metropolitan areas. You know, everybody's got their own place and space, but
you can have city magic. I'm not saying that that's not true, but like, interacting with city spirits is not the same thing as trying to interact with the divine, and the divine is easier to encounter in the woods. It just is.
So, I mean, if there are people who are interested in engaging in their place of city, what recommendations might you give to them?
I've got some good ones for this. I love place-based magic. I really do. And
Cool.
early on, the places that I was in they're not wooded places, right? I was in Texas, and so Austin was one of our favorite towns. And I'm like, we worked with the spirit of Dallas, but I just didn't like it. I didn't particularly enjoy its vibe. So, if you want to be a snob, it's a great place to vibe with, but it wasn't for me. So we would go on a trip, go on vacation, like a couple days out to Austin for something or another. And we came up with this idea. I don't remember where we were in the Rune Soup years, but it was sometime like prior to 2019 and everything. We were just, my wife was a little later to Magick than I was. I had worked at it for a long time, and then she discovered me doing magic at one point, and we had to share it a little bit more. And so at that point, she was a little newer to it, and I was showing off. We were doing experimental things. We were trying to like change our life. We were like, let's see if we can get something to work. So in that,
Cool, magical buddy. That's tight.
Yeah, no, it was really good, and that's a fun thing to do before it all gets serious and like, okay, now I have to live up to this thing I've signed on for, right? So it was just like, let's see if we can make something magical happen in this town. We've been to Austin many, many times, and like we've had great times or whatever, but we want like sparkly, like, oh, there's no way this would have happened unless the magic happened. So I don't remember if I saw this like in a Reddit comment or if this was a Gordon thing or whatever it was, but I got this idea somehow of using invisible ink to sigilize money, like to write on dollar bills our statement of intent as a sigil, right? And so we would take like $10 and we would have 10 individual dollar bills and we would sigilize it. And it'd be like, I think the evening in question was like to have an unexpected magical experience in Austin, right? Something indelibly magical, whatever it was. And then we turned that into a sigil and put that sigil in the invisible ink, which was a major pain in the ass. So that was our like effort. That was the energy driving into it, was like getting the invisible ink to write on the dollar bills and like focusing. And then we're like, okay, now let's just go out and spend the money and have a good time. And so we went out and we spent like 2 of the dollar bills at 2 different, food stands at the food truck park that was right over the way. And then we spent the other one on a drink on the way, and we just kind of like meandered through town in no particular direction, which Austin is fantastic for. It's like one of the best places to just wander and shit, right? And you'll mostly not get in any trouble, or at least at the time. So we wandered and wandered and wandered, and we wandered our way into a free Ghostland Observatory show in like on the South Congress Bridge. So you could stand on the bridge, and then it was at one of the like big parking lots nearby or whatever. I forget exactly what it was. But we walked up, and it was like the Ghostland Observatory riff really loud. I'm like, what did we walk into? And you could tell it was some kind of street festival thing, and it was free, and you could wander up, get your wristband, and wander past. And we're like, I like these guys. This is good. I know this. And we get there, and they're on stage in this thing, and it wasn't promoted in anything we'd ever heard of or whatever. And this was, I don't know, 4 miles that we had wandered. And I forget the other things that had happened, but it was a very sparkly experience. We did this, and then we did that, and we wandered into this free show that Ghostland Observatory has some like history with us, because they played the venue that I had worked at years ago many times over. And so like we had both gone to those shows, and then not one of our favorite bands, but like one of our favorite Austin bands just happens to be playing at this free thing, and we have an amazing view of it standing on the South Congress Bridge. And nobody knew Ghostland Observatory, so like no one cared. But we were very, very into it and had no idea. And so like that's light little magic that you can do, because that's very Austin, like to wander into something in a new section of town and not know what's going on and just get sucked into it all night. That's a super Austin-y thing. This was an exceptional example of that. And we went like beeline straight for the magical experience just because of this. That's worked. We did that also in Portland. We did something like that for, I think we did some sort of a wishing well thing versus the spending of the dollars, but the gist is reciprocate, right? Like give first some sort of offering, and if you can write your intention on it, all the better, into flow, like into the economy is kind of what I was thinking. And then that will flow around, and the city spirit is, of course, the city economy is part of the city spirit and so forth. And that's a way to talk to it. Wishing wells are another pretty good example. But like any dark corner, we've done New Orleans. If you're a witchy person, you should go to New Orleans, and you should do some intro to voodoo shit, make a veve out on the thing, right? And like, and not to mention, like you can just walk across them. There's various magical workings that kind of dot random cemeteries and places. If you go looking for magic, like don't go looking for magic. Do magic to see magic, to get pulled into something, and then that works.
Put that on a T-shirt. That's good. Don't
yeah,
go looking for it. Do it. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what was your experience in New Orleans?
New Orleans, let's see if I remember this clearly. We got like, it was sort of like my first engagement with the Fae, or my first sets of engagements with the Fae here, the Alush. They were, well, I like to say they were elusive. You know, they didn't, they didn't interact with us openly at first. And I would say the Loa are similarly like, I mean, they're not looking for more tourist attention. Like just one night of doing a few things may not have a major effect. But I had some like, what was that, around the corner, and we walked up on one. Like I did like a rum and cigar offering in some space over here, and then we like walked over and there was like one of the Loas Bebe on the ground with the whole like actual offering out. No one around it. I just walked up on that like, there was also magic here. Like I'm not the only one who's doing this tonight. And so like we got little glimmers of things, and very like I have imprinted the memory of that visit like very deeply, so I can like recall the various different steps and the places that we went to, and I discovered new parts of New Orleans, but I didn't have an out-and-out magical experience. I had a lovely time in a town that is just inherently magical, and there's always something around every little corner, and I had that feeling of magic more than a specific thing that I could make like a big story out of. But if we were to repeat that process over and over and over again, what you would get is a breadcrumb. Like you would go from, I didn't do a very good offering, to this is actually how you do the offering. Like that was probably an example. This is what it needs to look like when you, the one that I walked up on, right? And so I would go back and I would try that, and then you would get a little bit more response, and then you would do something else. And that's pretty much how spirit communication works, and is also very much the way that Jacques Vallée talks about like fairy engagements and so forth. Is it's a progressive experience. You have like a flyby, and then you see something in the woods, some twinkly lights, and then you have an experience. And the sort of repetition is, I think, part of acceptance. Like you have to walk into the fairy circle. They shine the lights. You can ignore them. Like you can not go into the fairy circle, but if you're one of the weird ones, go in there. You're gonna have whatever time you're gonna have, you know. So there's a little bit of like warm up that happens with this. But if you have some time to spend, we've been to Austin many, many, many times, so we had some sort of relationship with it. We've been to New Orleans like 2 or 3 times and did the Magic the one time. So like the volume of experience, I think, has to do with the repetition and the fidelity of our relationship with the place. If you live in a place, it's gonna be easy. If you tourist to a place and you're like, show me something cool, like, maybe you might get something cool, like you probably have something happen, but if you invest into that over a number of nights, or you do bigger offerings or something, then you're much more likely to have a weird experience in a weird little town like that.
Awesome. Thank you. So, okay, now I'm curious, with your wealth of experience, knowledge, and insight, we are getting into an ever weirder situation as our experience of time seems to march forward. Where do you see us going? Let's say what, by 2030? And if it's different, where would you prescribe us as to where you would want us to go?
I am increasingly convinced that the timeline is a cooperative, collaborative thing, and that what we're doing is selecting the timeline that we're going to be experiencing. And over the course of the last few years, I have watched us make selections that are not popular with me, that are pushing us in directions that I don't think are ideal. I think that the way that fate works, it's a sort of a tunnel experience. Like there's a trajectory that's overall happening. And your particular point in that is something that you have some leverage around. You can impact through magic, through effort, whatever. But as a consensus, and as some sort of fated necessity, we're going through an experience. Now, how we choose to go through that experience, I think we can lean in and lean out of dystopia or cruelty to each other or whatever. And we are leaning in a very big way right now that is unfortunate and I think hurts most of us. I think we all don't particularly enjoy it. I don't think we're all aware of it. I don't think we know that we can do something about it. I think there's a lot of hopelessness that is kind of like a tool of the enemy, if you will. But the enemy is the Wetiko. It's ourselves being cruel to ourselves. It's not, I mean, it's perhaps a little bit of the demiurge living large at this time, but the demiurge was a natural function. Let's just say society or civilization. Like there has to be, not for me personally very much, I'm a pirate, fuck that shit, but for society to function, there does seem to need to be some kind of hegemony, because most people don't want to truly have like, the sovereignty isn't an allowance of yourself, it's suddenly a massive responsibility. You have to make all those choices. Most people aren't like interested in making all those choices. The magical community is more inclined, but not all of them necessarily. There's a lot of armchairs and watch things happen and talk about stuff that happens in the magical community that isn't about taking action. But I think and I'm a wizard and I'm a pirate wizard, right? Like, I'm obviously an aggressively different kind of person and I like to live like that. If that's not your story, it's not your story, and we are all creating consensus, and you do what you think is right, because the fate will take us where we're supposed to be. But I think that we are given the opportunity to engage more. I noticed, mostly engaging with the astrological community, but a little bit with the magical community and, like, let's say the New Age and meditation, mindfulness kind of community, that everyone seems to be pretty passive. Like, it's about transmuting what's happening to you. It's about moving through or finding what's there, following your bliss, not deciding. Like, moving with the flow is very highly promoted, we'll say, right? Favored. That's not really how I do, and I don't have easy experiences. Moving yourself to the jungle and building a homestead is not an easy experience. It's there's a lot of blood sacrifices that happen on a daily basis, right? Like, it's effort and it's sometimes pain, and I'll share that I had almost a year where I had a nearly fatal, like, ear parasite eating away at my ear. So
I'm happy
part of my
that.
journey was just,
wow.
It was just part of my journey. It was just part of, like, coming to the jungle and learning how to be here. But that was a fucking wild experience that not everybody's going to sign up for.
I'm happy you're out of that. How did you get out of the ear? I mean, oh God.
Well, I'll try to keep it short, but I mean, magically enough, I did the Western medicine version because it was like sort of an epidemic. People who spent time in the jungle, there was this particular bug that got stirred up, probably because of the building that they were doing on the train, or just the jungle's sort of reaction to it, you know. And lots of people were getting bit. I had a really bad time, and when they like jam your ear full of poison in order to kill the stuff, right? When I did that, they like reused the needle all across my ear, and so it spread the fucking thing all around my ear. I spent like 9 months dealing with this, and it got very bad.
Whoa.
And then
you can't tell. You look good. Oh,
thanks.
Man.
Thanks. I have an ear again. Like, it shocks me that you can't tell because it was fucked up. Wow. But it's okay. We can laugh about it now. It was 2 years ago. Like, whew. But the neighbor here, who's like a guy who does work on my land now, he had like a thing that he'd like blacked his ear over to kill some stuff, some other kind of a bug thing. And I asked him, like, what happened with your ear? Is there something that I can do with my ear because it's not really working? And he said it was different, but he knows a guy who can fix this thing. It's like, okay, don't worry, like, tranquilo, it's gonna be okay. And he hooked me up with the village, like, fucking herbalist, I guess. Dude made some herb stuff, put it on my ear. That didn't quite work. He made some much stronger herb stuff, but that on my ear, that shit worked really good. Burned most of the skin off of my ear and then killed the thing. Awesome. And it was done in 2 weeks, where we had been dicking with it for 9 months with Western medicine. So anyway, that is to say, when you choose sovereignty, you may get yourself into a situation that the way that you have been in your life no longer will solve the problem. Like, we were at the point where they were like, we can't fix you. You're gonna, I don't know, you're probably gonna die. So I was like, from this, like, I'm thinking in my ear, what are you talking about? And then like 2 weeks later, gone. And that's just because this guy knows how to use the herbs, and they didn't know what they were talking about. And the way that you thought, like, I could have been done with it in 2 weeks, and it wouldn't have been that bad, and it wouldn't have taken 9 months, and it wouldn't have been all over my ear, because they didn't know what they were doing. That doesn't exist. Like, you can't look this up on the internet and get good advice, and I definitely wouldn't look it up on the internet. It's horrifying. Okay. But like, there's ways, and there's been ways, and it was not a surprise, and like, this happens to them all the time. Like, that bro's had it like 3 times. It's just a thing you deal with, but you don't go to, like, you don't go to the cops if you want something done here. You don't go to the doctors. Like, that's silly. I don't know how to do anything. They're going to like whisper over some herbs and rub them in your ear, and you're going to be fine. But to get to that place, right. I mean, that was a learning curve, right? Like, I thought for sure because also you couldn't just go to a doctor. Like, you had to go to the government to get this thing, and there was this epidemic, and there was this big thing about it. And so I thought for sure they were going to take care of me like everybody else. But no, because I live in the jungle, and I have a spirit contract, and that is not why I have this thing, right? So in choosing sovereignty, you choose the fine print that comes with it. And that was just a super extreme example that I have from my own personal one. But not everybody wants that. Not everybody is going to navigate through that with the same success that I did and luck or whatever. And I don't think that was pure luck. I think that was, I presented myself well to the local spirits, and they gave me that option. They gave me the problem, and they gave me the solution, because it was part of a training. Because now we don't, when Sarah had her cancer treatment on her head, we used honey and Reiki to close the gap because that works. But the doctors were kind of like, see what works, and no, it's not a problem. So when you make radical choices and you choose to be sovereign, you choose to have an effect on the universe instead of to just let whatever flow with you or whatever, it's not for everyone. But if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, fuck that, go with the flow thing. I mean, there's times when you go with the flow, obviously. When you're in flow, things work better for you. But if you rely on flow, well, you're not going to build a jungle homestead.
Well said. Well said. Oh, my goodness. I mean, that's great advice for those that sit at the edge of the river and want to dive in. Yeah. It is an interesting time because it seems like there's more opportunity than ever to be able to create your own way of living. Absolutely. Yet it also feels like the currents that are carrying humanity, like you were saying, we're all going through this pretty thick tunnel of experience that we all have to go through. But how you go through it in particular is going to be, to a pretty fine degree, up to you. Yeah. So, and back to that, that can be the closeout question here. You've been fantastic. I know. I mean, we're about 15 minutes away from 2 hours. You're awesome. Thank you.
You're doing a great job, Douglas. This is very easy.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. I mean, this is just a joy for me to talk to somebody who is this deep, and as expertise is the right word, but it's not the best word that I want to use. So thank you for your expertise. But so what other bits of advice, perspective shifting, and frame making can you give to people who want to dive into the river?
Fortune favors the bold, but so do the fates. I think there's a lot to say for you can just do things. Especially when, like the world is your oyster. It's a very complicated thing, but that doesn't mean, it's going to be complicated whether or not you make proactive choices about what you want to do and who you want to be and how you want to live your life. So they're going to be the same kind of trade-offs, except you will not have any ownership of those decisions. And from where I sit, I can't do that. So I recommend to everyone that they take greater ownership in their future. You're not going to ultimately change the fate of humanity, but you might change your fate. And your story is what you are personally responsible for. And for those that are in your immediate vicinity that you take on the responsibility for, obviously, I care for my wife, I care for the animals that we have, I care for this land, I'm a steward of that, but I make decisions based on what is trying to come into the world through me, as I will quote another Gordon White there. How you get there may be different from mine. Mine was to spend 3 months doing devotionals to Venus to find out what wanted to come into the world through me, and then to use Hecate to mainline that into my reality. Your mileage may vary, but the basic idea of taking responsibility for the timeline, I think if more of us put our energies to something that wasn't there's nothing wrong with that magic I was talking about, have a great time in the city, go for it, knock yourself out, have fun. But also, don't be shy about doing real magic to change things in your life. You should, if you are into doing magic, you should do magic until there is no question that it is magical. Until there's no way that it would have happened except for the magic that you did. So in order to experience that, it can't be something that's that might have happened normally. No, go for something massive. Make a big, hairy goal and then go after it and convince yourself. At the end of that, you'll be sitting in my shoes and be like, oh yeah, magic's real. And sometimes you got to be careful what you do with that shit because it works so good, because it is so real. And live a more magical life. Do not allow people to tell you that your magic is not real. Every time that you encounter something that you think is magical, believe that it is magical. Even if it's not, what's the harm in that, right? If it was going to happen anyway and it felt magical, it's fucking magical. Go with it. Because what that will do is that will change your inability to change the future. Because if you believe that you have changed the future, you believe that you can change the future. You can change what is really happening. So lie to yourself and tell that you can do that. And you'll find, retroactively, that you are mostly convincing yourself that you are not having that effect when you actually are. Because we are all creating consensus reality. What magic does is it provides tools for focusing that in very specific and precise kinds of ways to achieve those outcomes which most want to come into the world through us.
Beautiful. Thank you. That is massive. I'm putting that in my pack, and I am taking it with me wherever
Awesome.
I go. Okay, I mean, brilliant. So obviously, postmugglism.com, go there. Is there anything else you would like to share with the people who will be listening to this throughout time where they can find you? Anything? I know you offer energy and shamanic healings. Anything else you want to tell the people?
Yeah, if you like the jungle stories, if you think that that's radical and interesting, then you can find me on Instagram in a mostly non-magical kind of way, just talking to my ducks and building our things at Nathan in the Jungle at Instagram. So
Nathan in the Jungle at Instagram. Okay, all right. Anything? I know you're on X. Anything else?
It's been kind of like we've been working on building the business, and so unfortunately I haven't been blogging as much in the past. I expect to return to that in the near future.
They are good.
I am working with Hecate to figure out exactly what it is that she wants me to do. So stay tuned and just know I'm out there working on stuff.
Well, in the meantime, everybody, please go to postmugglism.com, get an education. It is well worth your time, and the instructions are explicit and there for you to take advantage of. Nate, you are a brilliant human being. I cannot appreciate you enough. Thank you for hanging, and I look forward to more, sir.
Well, you are too kind, Douglas. It's been a super pleasure. Thank you for letting me nerd out with you for a couple of hours.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to doing this again sometime.
Thank you so much, and all the success to you and beyond.
Likewise, brother. Have a good one.
Peace. Hey, that was absolutely fantastic. I had a blast. Thank you so much, Nate. It was a pleasure to have you on Hanging with Mr. Douglas. Your insight is hyper valuable, and I hope everybody considers and puts into practice whatever resonates with them from that wealth of knowledge you dropped on us during the episode. Thank you. Thank you very much. Postmugglism.com. I'm going to say it again. But just some notes and some after-show percolations now on my end. First off, at the 1 hour and 16-minute mark, how you call is what you get. Solid. Massive, and resonates in particular with Jordan Josak on his episode on American Alchemy when he was discussing his contact experiences and how, reaching out with love and an honorable intent, nothing violent or malicious or dominant or hyper skeptical, but love. That seems to make a big difference in his case and pairs very nicely with what our Jungle Pirate Wizard gave us this episode. And I've heard that in other places too, not just here and from Jordan. But next up, yes, are they the same thing? I don't know, and I find that fascinating that, here we have ancient societies, Victorian wizards, all writing about the same or at least very similar things. I mean, Nate said it, look at your Jacques Vallée. These contact experiences, not all of them, but a great deal of them do seem to echo each other in very interesting, rhymey ways, Is this thing the same thing? And is thing not a good enough word? Are these spirits and plasmoids discarnate intelligences both? Could these intelligences we are now beginning to look at through the lens of dirty plasma be ancient, maybe beyond time, style intelligences looking for interaction? I don't know. Maybe they've always been looking for interaction. Maybe in some senses, certain gods or deities that have presented themselves have just been avatar frames for intelligence that exists outside of our perceivable kind of palette of time. And they dip in and are like, hey, you can be better than you are, and then they dip back out. In some instances. Okay, now I think I got a little clever here in my notes. But, it's an interesting thing to think about, right? Because the way we categorize it is with the word trickster, and trickster is very much a catch-all. I don't think it does it service, because a trick sometimes can be nasty, sometimes can be fun. There seems to be that and more associated with this interaction here. But could they just be like ducks playing hide and seek? Could they be like cats pushing your cup off of the table? Along with human beings pulling pranks and sharing transgressive, hilarious humor, could they be as capricious and complex, if not more so, than us? Maybe. Now, I don't claim to know much of anything, but the correlates are consistent, and they do rhyme, as I was saying earlier, certainly enough to keep my attention. I think there's a there. Is it the catch-all for absolutely everything? I am familiar with very specific abduction literature. I'll mention it again. The Betty Andreasson case doesn't seem necessarily to overlay completely, and the depth of mentions, in particular when John Mack was investigating, as well as David Jacobs, of the violence done on human beings against their will, against their consent, without their consent. That certainly doesn't seem to be the same kind of thing that Nate was discussing in our conversation. But again, I don't know much of anything. I do find it interesting that there is quite a bit of overlap, but then sometimes that overlap doesn't seem to match up. Could they be different? We talk about it a little bit during the episode. Is there a spectrum within this non-physical intelligence experience? Could some of them be, from our perspective, nasty? And could some of them, from our perspective, be nice? And yeah, I think so. Do I think that there are shithead a-hole entities out there too? Yeah, I do. And, as an interesting litmus test, if we can see them in the human race, you can bet we can catch them all over the place. Regardless, the points Nate made carry massive weight. Spirit communication is not a privilege, it is a necessity. We are coming up against this craggy situation fast here. And whether it is prayer, tarot, Hecate, and beyond, we've got to build our vocab set better. So how does all of this magic talk help us put ourselves on better footing when it comes to our ever-complexifying world and the fact that we are, or have been, interacting with non-physical intelligences for quite some time, and they seem to be making more of their presence known here than ever before. And how we are being guided to think about them in some certain ways. So how can this talk help us out? Strengthening our ability to listen to these intelligences that are coming through when we decide to commune with them, whether it be through tarot, through clearing out our cortisol levels so that we can listen in better, getting to know ourselves by taking control of our lives through actionable practices, some of which seem incredibly potent, that Nate had prescribed for us. And you can find on his website, again, postmugglism.com. These tools, whether presented in the magical frame or in the frame of self-inquiry and self-actionalizing, these tools put you on a better foundation. If you are able to hear more, if you are able to hear better, if you can attune past stress and anxiety, if you can become familiar with relation building in general, but particularly when it comes to non-physical entities, you will be better off if and when the time comes that you are confronted with this more complex reality in a way that we are not normally confronted with, or have not been, I don't know, normal may not be the right word, but to be more aware, to have experience in taking action and, again, practicing some kind of getting to know yourself service will put you on a firmer foundation. And this information that Nate has given us is a wonderful way to vector in to that trajectory for yourself. But take what resonates with you and drop the rest. This is one of many different roots to the tree of experience and growth that we are all moving toward. Like water droplets being sucked up the roots, we are flowing and leveling up. Is that an okay analogy? It's an okay analogy. There are many streams and rivers to the sea. There are many roots from the dirt to the tree. We are, as Nate discussed, collectively as a species going through something. But we have, as Nate discussed, far more agency than we may be initially aware of in our prescribed experience of reality. So that's how I think it puts us on a better, firmer footing as we move forward. And, there are power structures, cough, cough, the government, cough, Lucius Trust, cough, cough, that are, trying to funnel our way of thinking about this in a certain way. This show is all about feeling out and making up our own mind map outside of the predefined power structure confines. We and our lived realities are worth it, I think. And that's why we're putting this together. That's why we're having these convos. Thank you for hanging with these convos. Now, the super quick takeaways: spirit communication is a skill worth cultivating. And whatever form it may fill, it's happening. Get involved. The majority of praxis is also just getting out of your own way. I think that was an important point. Find a practice of regulating yourself to a space where magic is more readily noticeable and engageable. Hug a tree, right? Read your Jacques Vallée. Great point. This interaction has been happening since humans could try and describe it. Go outside and just feel okay for 20 minutes. Touch grass, embrace trees, talk to the animals. If it's tough to get out in nature, make yourself some nature. Get your fingers dirty, as Nate says. A fun little sigil tip he also provided. Invisible ink on cash. Spread it around. Enjoy some city magic. Also, when it comes back to spirit communication, it is reciprocal. You want to give. We have a nicer time when we are giving more than we are asking for. Also, a new t-shirt idea. Don't go looking for the magic. Do the magic. And I like what Nate said here. Life is complicated whether you make the decisions about how you live your life or not. Fortune and the fates favor the bold. Make a big, hairy goal and go after it. Love that. Well, thank you again to our jungle pirate wizard, Nate. Check him out on Instagram and X and his website, postmugglism.com. On Instagram, that is Nate in the Jungle. On Instagram. Check him out on Instagram, Nate in the Jungle. What a blast. Postmugglism.com. Nate, thank you again, and thank you all for hanging. I'll catch you on the next one.